she set her table up in the busiest room in the house, and he would come in, with a lizard from outside or a scratched up knee or whatever. And she would just stop what she was doing and turn to him. She said that's his memory, is that she always did. I mean,
Yeah.
as mothers, we are always like, oh man, like I don't always do that. Whether or not she always did or not, that's how he remembers her, which is really beautiful.
Welcome to the Simplified Organization Podcast, 15-minute conversations with real moms about managing our homes and family life cheerfully to the glory of God. We can actually enjoy housework and love being homemakers when we focus on truth and work with gratitude. I'm Mystie Winckler, homemaker for almost 23 years, homeschool mom of 5 with 2 graduates, and author of the book, Simplified Organization, Learn to Love What Must Be Done. I write and podcast at Simply Convivial and run Convivial Circle, a community helping women to excel at homemaking and do life cheerfully. And today I'm joined again by my friend Sarah Mackenzie. Sarah was actually the very first guest on this podcast when I launched it about 2.5 years ago, and I'm so excited to have her back again.
It feels like it's been longer than that. So many big life things have happened.
Yeah. Get on the fast track with teens for sure.
Yes, definitely.
Sarah is author of Teaching from Rest, the Read-Aloud Family, and now several new picture books, including her just released picture book that we're going to talk about today, Because Barbara Cooney Paints Her World. She's the host of the Read-Aloud Revival podcast and lives in the Northwest with her husband of 23 years. They've homeschooled all 6 of their children, and she has 1 college graduate, 2 current college students, and then in the weeds with 3 at home. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be here, as I always am, to chat with you.
So let's start off by talking about you getting into writing picture books, which does seem a little bit like a no-brainer, but why start your own publishing house? Like, that's an extra thing.
Oh, is it? I mean, yes, it really is.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have wanted to write picture books. I've been trying to write children's picture books for years and years, actually, and I'm really committed to it a couple of years ago. But then once I had several books written, I had an agent who was shopping them out to publishers. It just became really apparent that maybe the vision that I had for the books was not the same as it just wasn't necessarily what the publishing world was looking for. Also, I think my work at Read-Aloud Revival has given me a sort of unique window into what families like ours want in the books that they're reading with their kids. And that's something that maybe the larger publishing world doesn't quite understand. So I decided, actually, I shouldn't say I decided. My husband, I kept getting frustrated. I felt like we were just keeping on hitting walls. And my husband said, why don't you just do it yourself? Just create your own publishing company. And I was like, well, for one, because I don't know how to do any of that. He was like, not knowing how has never stopped you before, which is true. And also with motherhood and there's lots of things we don't know how until we do them. I will say it's been a few years in the making now that we've been working on it. We just launched the publishing house a little over a year ago, but we've been working on it for several years. And it is a much bigger project than I realized when I jumped into it. But it's also been really interesting to sink into it and realize I just love it so much. I love all the parts of making books. So right now at Waxwing, most of the books we're working on for future years, I didn't write. We have different authors and illustrators. And I'm just as excited about all of those books as I've ever been about writing my own, which I didn't think would happen. So it's been really fun, hard and also fun.
That's really cool. Well, I just love how high quality the books are. That I know you just have a lot more control when you do it yourself, which
it's true.
And you're right. Like the big companies are making decisions based on different criteria.
Yeah.
Than we might prefer.
Yes. I mean, I think our commitment to quality, I think the object that you hold in your hand when you're reading aloud with a child, especially, it just feels like this whole sensory experience. You've got a kid oftentimes on your lap or snuggled up close, and you have these beautiful illustrations so close. I wanted it to feel like how I feel when I'm holding my very favorite picture books in my hand. So that's been an uphill battle a little bit to like really focus on quality to make sure the books are as beautiful as we could make them. But we've been able to just partner with a lot of great people to help us make them, an art director and a great printer, and all the different pieces have come together over time. So I'm really delighted with them.
Yes. So let's talk about the latest one, Because Barbara. So it's a biography kind of Barbara Cooney, who did some of the very best picture books. I loved the little illustrations that have her holding her books in there, because like Chanticleer's my favorite, actually.
Yes. That's your favorite of hers?
It is. I get it for baby gifts for people because it's usually a book that no one knows about.
Yes, it's true. Even though it won a Caldecott. Yeah. Yeah.
And the end pages on these are just beautiful. They're the kind of art and the layout that like kids, my kids would just pore over the picture books and just like stare at the pictures for a long time. And it seems like so many newer books, like the art just doesn't bear that kind of like long gaze that the best picture books really do have. And so I feel like, oh, this is like the really good picture books.
Yeah, it feels to me like a picture book is a way we can put sort of an art gallery into the lap of our children, get them really close to it. I think there's sort of this fundamental, like when you see picture books that are like ugly, for lack of a better term, I feel like there's this fundamental disrespect of the child, because really they're taking in all this beauty. It's exactly why like our older kids and teens, when they see a book that you read to them as a child, they're like, I loved that book. And they spent so much time poring over those illustrations. So a couple things that were really fun about Because Barbara Cooney herself, which I think listeners or watchers may be familiar with, Miss Rumphius, Roxaboxen. She did the illustrations for Roxaboxen, Chanticleer and the Fox, like you mentioned. Oxcart Man, she won a big award for as well, a Caldecott honor for that one, I believe. She had a commitment to detail and quality that is somewhat unmatched in the world of illustration. And so when Eileen came on, Eileen Ryan Ewan is the illustrator of this biography. And when she came on, she really brought that same kind of attention and respect for detail, knowing that's what Barbara would have done if she was illustrating this book. So for example, Barbara Cooney illustrated a picture book biography about Eleanor Roosevelt. And in that book called Eleanor, the baptism gown that Eleanor is wearing as a baby has like all the exact lace and pattern of her gown is exactly what Eleanor Roosevelt's baptism gown looked like.
Wow.
Yes. And Barbara did this with everything. With Chanticleer and the Fox, every grass and flower and plant in that book truly grew in Chaucer's time in England. So she had this kind of, I would say, like almost an obsession with making things accurate that like people wouldn't even notice, like if she hadn't mentioned, when none of us would have known that. So it was really fun to watch Eileen then pull that same kind of commitment to detail into this book. So she flew to Damerscott, Maine. She sat at a kitchen table with Barbara Cooney's son, Barnaby, who showed her a picture after picture after picture of his mom, wallpaper from her wall. And all of that is in that book. And it's really fun. Things that you wouldn't really notice, you wouldn't really know were accurate. But once you do, it just feels like a book full of Easter eggs.
Oh, that is super fun. And so my favorite part of the book, and this goes along with our theme here at Simplified Organization, is a picture of Barbara in the middle. It says that she set up her artist table right in the busiest part of the house. And it has her there doing her art, but with her kids, being kids all around her. Like this is just doing life with your kids right here.
Yeah. So much. I mean, when Barnaby, her son, was the one who told me this, that she set her table up in the busiest room in the house, and he would come in, with a lizard from outside or a scratched up knee or whatever, and she would just stop what she was doing and turn to him. She said that's his memory, is that she always did. I mean, as mothers, we are always like, oh man, like I don't always do that. Whether or not she always did or not, that's how he remembers her, which is really beautiful. But also he would tell these stories of like how she loved growing tomatoes. So she grew all different kinds of tomatoes, and she just pulled her kids right into it. So she would teach them and she would plant with them. She would take them on nature walks and point out moss and lichen, or pack a picnic and go on. Her creative life really fed her life with her kids. It all felt like one of a piece. It doesn't feel like she separated them out. And I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so tempting to think, especially if you do have a creative endeavor or a professional endeavor, like, okay, I have to have, family time and work time, and ne'er the two shall interrupt one another. It's like, well, it doesn't have to be that way. And that's not the way, people used to do life.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I think in some regard, I can see how we have that temptation now, that maybe because we have all of like our devices and things, the interruptions of each of our lives like kind of are louder.
Yeah.
But there's something about the unit, like how they were so integrated for Barbara's life. She would travel sometimes on her own, sometimes with a friend, sometimes with her children, when she was doing research for a book. Like if she was going to set a book, if a book was set in the Appalachian Mountains or in Greece or anywhere, she would pack up and go. And so she could see it. Of course, she's got that attentiveness to detail. So she wanted to see it with her own eyes and really capture what she saw. There's this beautiful quote, and I wish I had it memorized. I really need to memorize it, where she says that in all of her books, what she's trying to do with all of her art is say, isn't this beautiful? Isn't this wonderful? Look at this. And I think, oh my goodness, as mothers, if we were to attend to our children like with that same kind of creative spirit, like not that we have to grow the most beautiful garden, but more of a, look at this, look what we can grow, that kind of a childlike wonder. And I have a feeling that her 4 children, because they were creative and bustling and because her life was very bustling around her, also fed into her creativity as well, like into her books and into her work.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Because the settings and the action in the books are bustling with real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
The other thing that I loved about this picture book biography is that you see time pass through it in the art too. But maybe it's because I have, teens and graduates and married sons and my first grandbaby on the way. And, the life changes. And I had to change all my, pictures online because it's like, oh, look, I'm not 30 anymore. Actually, maybe I should update that photo.
We feel 30. So then we don't really notice it.
And so like, as the book goes on, Barbara like gradually ages and like her approach and the time that she has. And actually there are real photos in here as well, but there were seasons in her life as well. And she went with the season that she was in. And I love how that was portrayed in the book.
I love it when I meet somebody who's older, who still has like this vivaciousness for life, or like they're still doing creative things. And of course, you don't do things at the same pace when you're 75 or 80 that you do when you're 30. That's not what I mean. But there is something about showing, especially in a book, I think, portraying older people as being, I was going to say generative, but I don't think that's the right word, actually. Like respecting where they are in life, and also all the wisdom and beauty that they bring, and also showing them as active, not just so often, especially in picture books, I think older grandparent types are shown as being like old and feeble, incapable, that kind of thing. And that there's a place for that too, to some degree, but it is really fun to be able to portray somebody real who really was vivacious right up to the end, who insisted she was going to live to be 100. She didn't, because we don't get to pick those things, but but I can hear her, like in my heart, I can hear her voice. I've never heard her voice. I don't even know what it sounds like, but like, I'm going to live to be 100. And she definitely said she was going to live to be 100 because she had too many plans.
That's right. And you see that in Miss Rumphius. And then your first picture book was a sequel, kind of. A spin-off of Miss Rumphius, A Little More Beautiful.
Yeah, I think my own love of Barbara Cooney is like all over my books. It's like I can't help myself. So the first picture book, A Little More Beautiful, really is like an homage to Miss Rumphius. That I love that book so very much. And that same idea of in Miss Rumphius, there is a little girl named Alice. This is Barbara Cooney's, I think probably her most famous book, whose grandfather tells her when she's young that she has to do something to leave the world more beautiful. And so she spends her whole life doing all these different things. She wants to live by the sea, see the world, live by the salty sea, and make the world a little more beautiful. I think that might have been the three things. And so she does those things. But at the end, she doesn't know how she'll make the world more beautiful. And she ends up doing it by spreading lupin seeds all over the countryside. And in my conversations with Barnaby, Barbara's son, he told me that was actually based on a real woman who really did spread wildflower seeds all over the countryside to make the world a little more beautiful. It was a little different, but the real story is slightly different. But I loved that so much. And Lou Alice, I guess a little more beautiful, has an old lady named Lou Alice so I guess I have a thing for old ladies in books now that I've not actually thought of that. Until now. And that one's a little different because there's like a kind of feeling in that one of the age and wisdom that's passed down to us by those who've come before, and also that we each have something that we're here to do that's unique to each of us. And in this book, I feel like we're seeing that somebody who did that, who really did live into leaving the world more beautiful than she found it, because she definitely did.
Yes. Well, tell people where they can find books published by Waxwing.
Because Barbara is available now, which is very exciting, you can actually get it anywhere books are sold. This is a new development for us at Waxwing, which is also pretty exciting. So you can buy it wherever you like to buy your books, whether that's your local bookstore or somewhere online. And you can find out about all of our books at Waxwing at waxwingbooks.com. We are making books that appeal to a wide range of ages, because we know that families like to read stories together, and it's even better if you can read a story that your 4-year-old and your 14-year-old both enjoy. And so our first 3 books are picture books, but over the coming year, you'll see more picture books coming out, along with a middle grade fantasy novel that will be a great read aloud for all ages, and several other really great books that we've got. Another picture book biography about the illustrator of the Narnia books, all kinds of really good projects that we've got coming down the pike.
Very neat. All right. And I will put links in the show notes and all of that. So thank you so much for joining me today, Sarah.
Thank you, Misty.
Just reasons to read and think about what we read and have those good stories rattling around in our imaginations.
That's right. Thank you so much for having me.